So we watched Nosferatu yesterday.
The plot is...
It is the remake of the 102-year-old film Nosferatu, or the 55-year-old film Nosferatu. Nosferatu is basically your typical Dracula story because the original Nosferatu, Dracula wasn't public domain at that time, and somebody said, damn, I really want to make that, but I can't because it's not public domain yet. So they just made a ripoff.
Yep.
But now the ripoff is also public domain, along with Dracula. So sometimes filmmakers say, I want my Dracula remake to stand out, so I'm going to call it Nosferatu. And it's your basic story of Dracula. Guy's like, I'm going to sell this creepy vampire home. And then he goes out to the creepy vampire's house, and the creepy vampire is like, hang out, man. And then he gets bit a bunch. And sometimes he's mind controlled, and this one he's not. They go back, and then his wife is like, I'm going to be honest with you, I've been fucking Dracula since I was 12. And then he's like, damn. And then Dracula comes back and is like, you gotta give me consent now. And eventually she realizes the only way to save the world and her town from the plague of rats is to get fucked to death by Dracula. So Aiden, what did you think of Nosferatu?
It's very good. It's a Robert Eggers movie. It's weird, horny Dracula.
Yeah.
It looks impeccable. Like every technical element of this movie, just like every other Robert Eggers movie, is fantastic. The cast is very strong. Willem Dafoe is doing the same thing he was in Beetlejuice, where he's the eccentric.
The fact that they
smart.
decided that Willem Dafoe was going to be a half comedy meme character was dope.
Yep.
I like
Willem Dafoe's just doing the Willem Dafoe thing. You got Craven the Hunter himself,
Aaron Taylor Johnson,
who's
back
good in this
theaters.
movie actually, unlike Craven. I don't know if it's because he didn't have to do an American accent or
I think people just
if he
write.
just gave a shit.
People are like, we wrote a really boring action movie character 90% of the time, superhero. We should hire Aaron Taylor Johnson. And they're like, you really got to buy into this script. And Aaron Taylor Johnson is like, how much money am I getting paid? And then he accepts it and does a shitty ass job and moves on. But in this movie, he gives a fuck.
Johnny Depp's daughter's there. She's sad a lot. It was apparently originally supposed to be Anya Taylor-Joy from Robert Eggers' previous movie, The Bitch. But for some reason she didn't.
She was in The Northman too.
She was in The Northman as well.
I'm shocked they didn't get from the cast of like alien-looking
Robert Eggers has
women that are around these days. Because it's not just her. What movie was it that we saw with the alien-looking lady? You know what I'm talking about? We were talking about how we're like the mixture of Jenna Ortega and Anya Taylor-Joy. She looked like an alien.
Oh, the girl from Y2K?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you could have. But anyways. Yeah, no, this is definitely feels like something that was written for Anya Taylor-Joy, that's for sure.
We got one of the Skarsgårds doing the Skarsgård thing that they always do. You know, this is not the one that played Pennywise, but it's the other one.
I thought this was, but that makes sense, I guess. But it isn't.
No, this is the one from The Northman, which is not the Pennywise one. The Pennywise one is like the third most famous of the trio. Like Bill Skarsgård or something.
Yeah, Bill Skarsgård is the
Tom
one
or
that's
something.
in here.
No. Yeah, maybe it is.
He worked with the other Skarsgård, and I don't know, people like them.
Dracula looks very creepy. They gave him, well, Nosferatu, but they made him substantially more freakish than he's ever been before. He's like a weird demon. They gave him a mustache for some reason, which is kind of odd.
Yeah, he got like
It's a little distracting, but
I
other than
think
that, he
they
looks
were-
like a scary, like fucking melted man.
They gave him the Hulk Hogan mustache that Vlad the Impaler had in that painting of him that's really famous.
Yeah,
I think they wanted to like pay homage.
yeah.
And they're like,
Yeah.
realistically, wouldn't Dracula have a Hulk Hogan mustache? But otherwise be grotesque and creepy?
The whole movie is like weirdly sexual. It's a very horny movie. Dracula and Johnny Depp's daughter get their freak on all the time. Dracula, vampire, Nosferatu is just crazy horny. And he's like, I don't feel love, but I really just want to fuck your tight pussy, Lily Rose Depp. And then Lily Rose is like, yeah, I'll cuck my husband to save everyone, I guess. It's very odd. It's pretty straightforwardly just Nosferatu outside of the horniness. Like, all the beats are there. Like, you got the boat and the rats and the people dragging the coffins through the street because of the plague, and all that stuff's there, but it looks fucking immaculate because it's a Robert Eggers movie. It's a very good time. It might be a little long. I felt it dragged a little bit in some places, and also there's a certain type of people that this is not going to appeal to, because right after the movie ended, as me and Connor were standing up, the lady 2 seats down from me slapped her hands on her armrest and said, well, that movie sucked. I think a lot of people in the theater probably felt like that because they got tricked into seeing the horny Dracula art house movie, but
yeah, I feel like there was one guy in the front who I don't know if he thought laughing. I don't know if he thought it was a comedy or he thought it was really bad, so he was trying to like laugh at it like The Room style, but he was like obtrusively, forcefully laughing, like it didn't sound natural.
Yeah, it was very odd.
It was pretty awkward.
There's a lot of people, yeah.
And it wasn't like at the Willem Dafoe parts, which occasionally were meant to be like kind of ridiculous and goofy, but like Nosferatu would just like Orloff would just like show up somewhere and be like, I'm gonna fuck you to death or whatever, and then he'd start laughing really hard and like slapping his knee, and then a couple other people in the audience wouldn't know what to do, so you'd hear a couple other like spread out
hesitant chuckles.
Yeah,
it's a strange experience. Seeing this in a packed theater was a strange experience.
Yeah, Robert Eggers in packed theaters is not something I'm used to.
No, it's...
Granted, I think his last 3 movies I watched... Well, the last 2 movies I watched just after work at AMC, so there's no one in those theaters, so I was just setting it up.
But yeah, it's very good. It is Nosferatu again, and it was a big passion project for Robert Eggers for a number of years, apparently, and it paid off. It turned out. Connor, what'd you think of Nosferatu, parentheses, 2024?
I think what I thought was most interesting about it, which, I mean, like, it had a lot of Robert Eggers staples, but I think what makes me like this the most is... So The Witch was a really solid movie, but not perfect, because it was kind of his break into the world. And then he did Lighthouse, which was of a similar scope, and I think my biggest complaint with Lighthouse is, like, it's a decent movie. My problem is I feel like I would have liked The Lighthouse. I would have, like, loved The Lighthouse if it was, like, a 20-minute short in, like, an anthology. Like, I almost wish Robert Eggers would have, like, done, like, a bunch of, like, 1920s horror films, and, like, The Lighthouse was a 20-minute part, and maybe he could have done other stuff in there, because I feel like he's got a lot to say in this like pseudo art house horror shit. Northman was cool, probably a little too long. I think what was my favorite part about this was that it was a little long, but I think it did a good job to establish, and I also got a really bad headache and fell asleep. I would wake up and fall asleep for like 2 seconds, then snore really loudly and wake myself up, and that happened for like I got like 20 minutes in and I started getting really dehydrated because the line was full. So I kept getting a headache and I fell asleep like 3 times for like a few minutes until I'd snore myself awake. So maybe the length felt more for other people. But for me, I thought the length was good. And I'm rewatching it. But what I noticed is like tonally it's kind of got like a progression on the Universal horror. Like you had Universal horror, and then you had the Hammer kind of reboot that wasn't really Universal, and then they never figured it out. They're like, are we gonna do like an Avengers style with like the Dark Universe, which we've lampooned a lot on this channel, and I'm gonna save it for the Wolfman next month. Because we will be talking, I'm sure the Dark Universe has time to be lampooned again, and it deserves it. But then you even got like Universal making like a cycle at Blumhouse that's coming up. They're gonna start doing shit.
Yep.
But like this feels like he's like frankly wanted to like follow the progression if Universal Monsters were like the early ones, the more gothic ones, not the goofy ones later on, but like the first like 5 or 10 Universal Monster movies when they and then like what Hammer did. But like Hammer had an easier transition, and then I feel like Robert Eggers wanted to live in a world where people just kind of kept picking up that torch and making weird like Universal Monster movies. So he seemed to have like very frankly tried to do that cycle. And I mean, even before that cycle, you had like Lon Chaney and the Hunchback of Notre Dame and Nosferatu and Frankenstein, the original. So I think he very much like pulled through that like gothic horror from the early days of cinema, and I thought that was a fascinating tone to it, but also wanted to look at it through the lens of a Robert Eggers movie from 2024 with amplified sexual themes, something Universal couldn't really do. Hammer could do it to an extent, but not like the extent where the movie ends on Lily Depp getting rammed by
scary monster.
Until they both burned to death in the sun because they were fucking for so long. But I mean, in a way, it kind of was like a weird like. I mean, I know Robert Eggers doesn't work with A24 anymore, but like almost like that new school like prestige horror. Version of Universal Monsters, which I thought was fascinating. And I also just thought the monster design was good. The story was slow but knew when to amp up the excitement. And I just think it was a good like emulation, like what if this was still popular? Or perhaps just Robert Eggers frankly being like, I want to take influence from those movies and move it forward, which I find interesting. I also think it's kind of interesting to like revive this Nosferatu character. I think it gave him a little more liberties. It was more like he wanted to adapt what was in the film. Because if he called it like Robert Eggers' Dracula, there'd be either an expectation for him to do something wildly different. Otherwise, he has to like ape off Bela Lugosi or the book. And
like following the footsteps of the weird Francis Ford Coppola one.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. He's like, those are the three options. Do you rip off Bela Lugosi? Do you try to adapt the book, which is hard to really adapt because it's a 200-year-old book? Or do you have to go fucking wild with it and do something totally different? There's also like exploitation Dracula, which usually is just a cheap Bela Lugosi. Perhaps he's like a black person or a woman or something. Like they switch it up, but like the tropes are like that, like Monsters or Addams Family style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting take on the vampire genre. It also very much like was romance and seduction heavy, which I think like the original Dracula and Nosferatu are very much about, just like on a very, very censored level.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was scary. It had some jump scares, but like he did the jump scares well to where like
I think about
there wasn't like a really
most
well
of them were done well,
telegraphed.
but there was a couple times. I think it was like 2 times in the movie where they just cut to a loud scream and it's Lily Depp's bloody, hyper-realistic eyes, like a creepypasta. Where she's bleeding from her eyes and it's like Squidward's suicide.
Yeah, no, I do. I will pertain to that, but I feel like Blumhouse is like people want jump scares, but they want it to like be well telegraphed, like you're going around the loop on a roller coaster. So the real score stops and it goes, and there's like a fast you know, you're doing like the fast violin, and then it goes, and then it's like a cat or something. And this wasn't like trying to hit you with fake outs, and it also wasn't like the key to the movie wasn't the jump scares. They were jump scares to an extent, which I thought was interesting. I don't feel like in the last like 40 years people have earnestly tried to make vampires scary very often. I think the genre just saw too much use and abuse and too much variety that vampires are very much like pop culture.
They're like goofy Halloween props or something people masturbate to, basically.
Yeah. Like the show What We Do in the Shadows is a great show. But like, you know, you have stuff like that, like where like and movie. But you got something like that where like they're the butt of a joke. They're not like the cutting edge of horror anymore. They were the cutting edge of horror literally 100 years ago.
More than that, like 150 now.
Yeah, 150 years ago.
Considering the books and all that.
They've been something for a long time. They've taken a lot of interpretations. The most famous vampire Dracula can just be used by anybody. It's so long public domain that unless you're like one-for-one copying a trademark's Dracula work, you can just do whatever the fuck you want with him.
Yeah, he's a fucking serial mascot at this point.
Count Dracula, literally. So I think the attempt to somewhat try to make him scary, I don't really get scared by movies. But I did appreciate that they tried to add some suspense to him. They use Nosferatu rarely. And yeah, it was cool. I thought it was like a really good attempt at reviving Universal monsters. Like I liked what Universal did with like the Invisible Man and the Wolfman. This trailer makes it really hard for me to tell what they're gonna do, but I think every once in a while, filmmakers, like a really good filmmaker, will say, "I like those old Universal monster movies. I'm gonna make one of those." And it's not like an earnest attempt to like revive the genre, but I can still kind of appreciate them attempting to bring some life back to it.
Yeah.
So, Aiden, would you recommend Robert Eggers' Nosferatu?
Yeah, if you like art house movies, if you're like a superhero, popcorn munching, action theme park movie person, maybe not.
Okay.
You'll probably be like the woman at the end of the showing.
One brief aside about that, Robert Eggers is teaming up with Sony Pictures to make a remake of The Labyrinth.
I did hear about that.
Which seems fucking wild if it happens, but it's Sony Pictures, so I'm not holding my breath, but I feel like there's a good chance we review that in a couple of years.
I was reading that, and it seems like pretty much everyone was talking about how, like, the guy reporting on it just makes up a bunch of bullshit, so I guess we'll see if that's true at all.
But either way, people on CBR were really mad, because they're like, Labyrinth is my favorite movie of all time, because David Bowie's in it, and they're like dancing, and it's a really fun movie, and I saw that Nosferatu movie, and it was fucking boring, it was sucked, and no one fucking fought. I think I'd love to be on CBR, because it humbles me from being too pretentious, you know? They're like, Nosferatu was a gay movie. People were homosexual in the movie, and it's like, I thought it was a pretty straight movie, dude. She was really trying to get it on with the ancient vampire. But people hate this shit. And they're like, I think Nosferatu was woke or something. I can't tell why I didn't like it, but could have been woke, really. But if they do that to The Labyrinth, if they try to make The Labyrinth woke, I'm gonna fucking kill myself. And that's genuine.
Yeah.
But anyways,
David Bowie's cock visible in every scene. Very straight.
That reminds me of my favorite anecdote. Well, yes, but
my favorite anecdote is when Jew Wario played David Bowie in the Nostalgia Critic special.
And then turned out
he was fucking kids and killed himself. Good times. Good times.
Yeah, well.
Anyway,
I remember watching Jew Wario's import game reviews, and then when he died, I was like, oh. And then, like, 10 years later, it turned out he was a pedophile.
Yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, I'd recommend it to the people who can tolerate this kind of movie.
Oh, no, my anecdote is about Labyrinth, but unrelated. Adam West in the Batman TV show, they shot the pilot and his cock and balls were showing too much, like David Bowie's. So the network made them one-for-one reshoot the pilot, but made Adam West take these like boner shrinker pills that they made for him. And then apparently it gave him like erectile dysfunction at like 30 or whatever when he was shooting the Batman show. He said he had a really hard time getting a boner because they were using penis shrinking pills on him. 1960s unregulated, like,
or something?
why didn't, yeah, you know, there's, or just like, yeah, pad the costume, let him wear some, put some fucking underwear under there, like, I guess there would be some underwear seams, but like, they were like, Fox was like, dude, your cock and balls are in this, and he's like, or it might not have been Fox, it's like CBS or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, they are, I guess we'll like go forward, and they're like, no, you're reshooting the whole fucking shit. So they made him reshoot the whole thing, and then it was like giving him erectile dysfunction or whatever.
Would you recommend the Horny Nosferatu?
Yeah, it was really good. It's right up my alley. I saw a really pretentious New Yorker review where I couldn't even understand what he was saying because he was using just like the most obscure words he could possibly find on thesaurus.com to describe how fucking boring he thought this movie was. I don't understand that. Like, I wonder. I like to think that he was it's like some pretentious old man who got really into TikTok or something, and then he's like, but he like still has the vocabulary he had when he started reviewing films in like the 1950s. So he's like, the etiquette of Nosferatu is that it was making me untransfixed with how fucking boring it was.
I wonder what Roger Ebert thought of this one. I'm glad Roger Ebert wrote all those reviews of movies ahead of time.
Roger Ebert,
before he died.
I feel like, but in the spirit of Roger Ebert, his new ghostwriters, because it's, you know, it's like Tom Clancy. Tom Clancy's been dead for 7 or 8 years, and he's still writing novels, you know.
Yeah. Still making video games.
Roger Ebert, but I feel like if I was to be like hired to be Roger Ebert,
so
I would give this a thumbs down because like we know that Puritan would not approve of this movie.
I love reading.
He'd be like, "This is the fucking
page,"
outrage.
and you're like reading the reception section, and it's like Roger Ebert thought fucking Batman vs Superman sucked 10 years after he died. It's like incredible. I guess we should do the other one, huh?
Yeah, I guess we should. So, anyways, I bought the direct-to-DVD Hellboy movie. We saw the trailer for this at Comic-Con because, I don't know, I saw it had a trailer at Comic-Con, so I watched it, and I was like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. But what they didn't say at Comic-Con, and I didn't know, is that it was only going to be released in, like, fucking Spain, and everywhere else it was direct to Walmart DVD.
Yeah.
So I was at Walmart the other day, and I saw it on DVD for $10, and I was like, oh. I don't know if it dropped at $10. There wasn't, like, a rollback sticker on it. I think they just released it on a plain-ass DVD. They put a slip cover on it, like anyone gave a fuck. So I was already buying Severance Season 1, which they finally released on DVD. Great show. I'm rewatching that. But, anyways, I saw that there was the shitty Hellboy movie finally came out today, and what was the plot of the shitty Hellboy movie?
Hellboy the Crooked Man. Hellboy goes to the Appalachian Mountains. I don't know when this takes place in the timeline, but I think it's like relatively early on.
I think it's like the 1950s or something.
Yeah.
I thought this was like a period piece, which is why. Anyways.
Well, that's just what Appalachia looks like, too.
Yeah.
There's a ghost, or like an evil demon named the Crooked Man, who's like an old guy in a top hat, and he moderately terrorizes the people of the town by turning people into witches. And because of severe budget constraints, that typically just amounts to him to a girl getting naked and jerking around on the bed. And then Hellboy draws a cross on a shovel and hits him. And then he turns into a bird and Hellboy chases him down. And he goes, "We aren't so different, Hellboy, you and me. We should team up." And then Hellboy says no and shoots his head off. And the movie unceremoniously ends because there was no budget.
Pretty much.
Connor, what'd you think of Hellboy the Crooked Man?
Hellboy the Crooked Man was pretty bad. I have been a comic fan for many years. I don't know if you guys have seen this channel, where all I do is talk about comic book movies, and then everybody just wants Aiden to make a Pokemon video, but it takes him forever because he's slow at editing. And he sucks.
I'm not slow at editing. Once I get started, I'll have it going. I'm just the game's sake for
He's lazy. He's not motivated like me. I sit here every day, I'm grinding out videos on Star Wars Extended Universe novels. Anyhow, Hellboy, never got into him. I didn't even really like the Guillermo del Toro movies that much. I don't know why.
I like those ones.
Just something about him. I don't like him that much.
I like those ones.
I don't have anything against the movies. I just don't like him that much. I don't like the idea of Hellboy. I don't like how he looks. But anyways, this movie really is the worst fucking thing I've ever seen. I never saw the 2017 movie, and I actually
Yes, we did.
You did.
We saw it in theaters together.
It came out when I was in Las Vegas.
No, it did not.
I have not.
We
seen
literally saw it together. It came out in 2020.
I did not see it.
It came out in 2020. We saw it together at the Eden Prairie Theater.
Did not. It came out in 2018 when I was in Las Vegas.
No, we saw it together.
We saw it together, and
we got the posters.
Yeah, you got the poster alone.
No, I did not see. Why would I see Hellboy alone?
Hellboy 2019 film.
You were not in Vegas.
April 2019.
You were not in Vegas.
I was dating Emily, and she wouldn't let me see that shit. I did not see this damn movie. I promise.
Yes, you did.
I made you see it alone. You mention it. Watch. Okay, fine. Here's what we'll do. I know you reviewed it on the channel because we had to do a wrap-up, and I talked about yesterday because you didn't see yesterday, and
I saw yesterday. We saw yesterday together.
No, I saw yesterday with... Oh, yeah, I did see yesterday with you, but I didn't see Hellboy. There's fucking Drunkview... Let's look up yesterday. Drunkview Roundup. Yesterday, Toy Story 4 and Rocket Man. We didn't see Hellboy. There's no Drunkview for it. I've never seen Hellboy. I never saw it. I never saw the reboot.
Okay, whatever.
I promise you.
If you didn't
You talked about it in one of these damn videos. Okay, wait. This is awkward because we're going to have to go and I'm going to have to find this damn video to prove so I can pull up your very words and prove to you that we didn't see it together. Like, it didn't happen. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wish I had something else to say.
Anyway.
Nope, we're not moving on from this. We're finding this stupid video.
We have limited camera battery.
Well,
we gotta get on to the other
my
shit.
point is, I never saw a fucking Hellboy. I never fucking saw it. I don't know why he's saying I saw it at the Eden Prairie Theater when it came out in 2019, and I didn't even work at the movie theater yet. And I had never been to the Eden Prairie Theater in my life at that time. Do not. I didn't work at the AMC theaters till October of 2019, and I had never been to the Eden Prairie Theater. I never stepped foot into it until I started Ronin. You saw it maybe with Isaiah. You clearly remember it. I never saw the fucking stupid ass movie.
We got the poster.
You probably grabbed it on the way out for free. I don't know. You could have saw it opening night. I don't know. You told me it was garbage, and I said I'm not going to bother seeing it then.
Yeah.
I didn't see it. I didn't see that movie. Anyhow, regardless of what Aiden thinks, Hellboy the Crooked Man, they shot it in a warehouse in front of a green screen. Hellboy doesn't have any of his friends. Like, I always liked the fish guy. I thought he was cool. But, it's just Hellboy. Like, it feels like a extended comic. Like one of those... It feels like a comic book annual, which I hate annuals, because it's like we're going to do something totally out the blue. It's going to be long, but not long enough for us to really establish something. It feels like a 48-page Hellboy annual where it's like some stupid fucking story no one cares about, and then they show it, and that was what the Hellboy Crooked Man was. The Crooked Man is in the vein of like Slender Man or Bye Bye Man or something, which I thought was bizarre. Is mostly Hellboy just kind of looks and it's like, wow, these naked women are really see them. And then he runs around warehouses and like foggy domains that clearly don't reach beyond the bog. It's just cheap. Like, Ketchup Entertainment, the company that created this film, somehow got the rights to Hellboy. Like, Lionsgate was like, fuck it, and let it default. So they made this really, really... I mean, it's not even like...
Written by the original creator.
Yeah, written by the original creator. I feel like it's one of those things where, like, the original creator made this little script. The rights went in default by Lionsgate, or Lionsgate dropped it, or didn't want to pay again, I don't know. And, Dark Horse was probably like, well, we gotta do something to make money. So, they sold Hellboy to let them do this movie, and then they made the movie, and it just, you know, it just felt really cheap. It's kind of like if there's a movie with Jake Gyllenhaal called Jarhead, which was a moderately successful war movie from 2007, that still gets installments that are sold at Walmart. Or like Jarhead 9 or 7 or something. Or like Leprechaun or something. Like, there's certain movies that if some little company is like, okay, we can get the rights to a movie people know, and then old people say, well, I saw that Hellboy character once, I've heard of him, and they're at Walmart, or maybe they're like in the trailer park and don't have access to the internet, and they're like, okay, Cletus, let's put it in our player, and then they watch the movie, and the only task of the filmmaker is to not make it the most fucking awful thing ever, so no one remembers it, and then it comes and goes, and who Cletus, like, who's like chain smoking cigarettes while he's watching this inside, puts it back in the DVD and then throws it on the ground for it to like get like cigarette ash and dirt on it until he tries to sell it to a pawn store one day. And that's supposed to be the fate of this movie, but we watched it. So Aiden, what did you think of Hellboy the Crooked Man?
Yeah, I think this movie's mostly hurt by the budget and having to be compared to the Guillermo del Toro ones. I really like those movies. I think they're fun and interesting to look at. This one is not. It's very cheap. They got absolutely... Whoever was in charge of actually putting this movie together got absolutely raked on the budget. Like, this is the cheapest, shittiest looking fan film project ever, where it's mostly just Hellboy either standing in the woods or standing on a very small soundstage.
It kind of does feel like one of those, like, officially, like, one of those, like, expensive fan films they go on, like, Kickstarter for and get, like, $1 million to make it.
Yeah, one of those, like, Star Wars Sith prophecy, and it's just some guy who knows how to do, like, a backflip.
Well, it's like a
Darth Maul.
It's like a bunch of buddies, one rich acrobat to play Darth Maul, and then you get, like, some, like, actor who once appeared on Star Trek in one episode, and you convince him to do it at a Comic-Con because he has nothing better to do, but he takes half the film's budget.
That's what this whole thing feels like. I do admit that I had trouble following what was happening, primarily because we were watching our cousins, and one of our cousins was running around screaming skibbity Robux. And
our cousin
he's an
7
iPad
or
kid.
8, and he's an iPad baby. Sticky iPad
but
baby.
also our 8 or 9-year-old cousin came and started watching with us. I was like, why is that lady naked and screaming and writhing around on the ground?
Yeah, it was a little awkward.
So that did make the movie a little harder to follow. I think for what it's worth, like, if this was a movie made with a reasonable budget, it would probably still be kind of boring, but it would just be inoffensive. The offensive part of this is that it looks like a fan film and was released onto a disc.
Yeah.
It would probably just be inoffensive and boring if it didn't look as absolutely horrendous as it does.
I will say the fact that they knew they couldn't release this clunker in theaters because it didn't look theatrically ready.
It didn't even
just
look as
dropped
good as the
for
shitty
$10
looking
on DVD at Walmart. Like, it was in that section of $10 DVD shovelware. It just had Hellboy attached, and it was sitting next to like fucking Jarhead 9 or like Beverly Hills Ninja number 55 or something.
Yeah.
Sharknado 48. Like,
yeah, it's I don't know. I don't think it's the most offensive thing I've seen this year by a long shot, but it was definitely the one most fucked over by its budget, and
for sure.
Like it wouldn't have been good even if it had like the Guillermo del Toro budget. I think it still would have been kind of dull. But all things considered, its biggest problem is the budget, which is not the worst thing to be, I guess. Like, I wouldn't have been offended if this movie looked like the prior one. The prior one was way fucking worse than this one. And like way more schizophrenic, where like David Harbour gets King Arthur's sword and kills a bunch of giants in the woods and flies around on a CGI dragon or whatever the hell happens. Some weird fucking shit.
Yeah.
Connor, would you recommend Hellboy the Crooked Man?
Honestly, if I'm being really genuine, it's not offensive at all. If you're like a Hellboy fan, or you're just like sitting at the house and don't have and want to watch a horror movie-ish thing, yeah, how do I put this? Once it goes free on Tubi, I guess it's worth a watch. It's like some shit you rent from the Redbox. I don't think it was bad. It's like a decent like hour and a half time burner. I neither like appreciate the movie in any way, nor did I particularly dislike it. I think the people behind it gave a fuck and were somewhat trying. I just think they were put under a lot of limitations where the concept far outweighed the budget, and they kind of had to put something together to sell at Walmart. Yep. I thought the guy who played Hellboy kind of sucked, if I'm being honest, but like, I think, you know, it's also hard to compare to the Guillermo del Toro movies specifically, which, as I said, I've never been a big Hellboy fan, but those movies are pretty good. Anyways, they're good. Don't expect one of the Guillermo movies, or even from what I've heard of the reboot, that one is also a fairly big movie. This is a very micro superhero movie, I think kind of trying to test the waters to see if they can milk money off of direct-to-DVD or streaming releases for Hellboy. Mm-hmm. And it very much is that. So if you can watch it for free on like Tubi or Amazon Prime, I say go for it. And I am sure that is going to be a possibility for you in 2 to 3 months when Walmart no longer carries the film. So Aiden, do you recommend Hellboy?
I don't know, I guess. Like, it only appeals to the niche audience of Hellboy fans. And if you're a Hellboy fan, I guess this is probably an adaptation of some comic or another, so that's probably exciting for you. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's inoffensive and a little dull, but everyone tried. Like, there was effort made, and it was mostly just hamstrung by a budget of like $12.
Approximately.
So I guess for Hellboy fans, it's a fine enough little return to Hellboy on a very micro scale, and no one else would ever even consider watching it, so there's no point in dilly-dallying about that.
Yep. I got tricked by the direct-to-DVD Walmart scam.